Walters is back as the official Bar of the Nats Chat podcast for our 6th season of coverage. Located just across the street from the ballpark, Walters is the best sports bar in Navy Yard.
The one-strike pitch. Swing a shot up the middle and over the leaping Abrams, base hit center field. Sajacy scores. Church to the plate to throw into second base. Safe there. 2-run score on the base hit by Burleson, and the Cardinals lead 2-0. Walker stands tall in the box. Big right-handed hitter. The pitch to him is blasted in the air, straightaway center and deep. Jacob Young tracking it back toward the warning track. At the wall, he leaps, can't get it, it's gone. Young tried to rob it, couldn't quite get high enough. And it's another home run for Jordan Walker, and the Cardinals lead 3-1. He has homered in each game of the series. He has 5 home runs this year.
And welcome to Nats Chat, along with Washington Nationals insider Mark Zuckerman of NatsJournal.com. I'm Al Galdi, host of the Al Galdi podcast. Mark is at Nationals Park, where the Nats' first homestand of the season has ended, and the homestand ended up being a 1-5 homestand, a 6-1 loss to the St. Louis Cardinals at Nationals Park on Wednesday to lose 2 out of 3 games in the series. The Nats in MLB's 2026 regular season now are 4-8, just 1-7 since the 3-1 start. This installment of Nats Chat is brought to us by Table to Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table to Mat directly through the website tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. You can call Table to Mat 240-388-2206. So the Nats have an off day on Thursday. That is their last scheduled off day until April 27th. The Nats from April 10th through the 26th are scheduled to play 17 games in 17 days. We hope the Nats are enjoying this off day because they're not scheduled to have another one for quite some time. But enjoying the off day might not be so easy off a 1-5 homestand. Although, you look at the homestand, 2 of the losses were due to the bullpen blowing late leads. So this, in a lot of ways, was a 1-5 homestand that should have been a 3-3 homestand. Meantime, this 6-1 loss on Wednesday, a game in which not only the pitching failed the Nats, but the offense failed the Nats. The Nats had been doing so well offensively, but Mark, the Nats on Wednesday, uncharacteristically, at least so far this season, not doing much offensively.
Yeah, and I suppose they were entitled to one of those because we hadn't seen really a performance like that offensively hardly at all this season. And they got up to a little bit of a hot start, and then they went ice cold, did not record a hit after the 3rd inning. You mentioned the 17 in a row that's coming up. I've got some real concerns there about what that's going to do to this pitching staff because they threw a ton of pitches on this homestand and specifically in this series. 543 pitches in this series against the Cardinals. They need a day off Thursday, and they're probably going to need another one again before that next one comes up. They're going to have to be more efficient with their pitching. They're going to have to get more length from their starters, or that's going to be a brutally tough stretch for them to go through. If not, they're going to have to score a lot of runs. They're going to need that offense to do what it did for a lot of the first 2 weeks of the season.
The pitching is really bad. And, that's stating the obvious. But when you look at the numbers, they are frightening. And it's not just the bullpen. The bullpen is the bigger issue, but the overall pitching profile of this team is wretched. The Nats, for this regular season through Tuesday, so this does not include what happened on Wednesday, dead last in MLB, number 30 out of 30 MLB teams in team ERA plus 65. 100 is average. The team ERA plus entering Wednesday, 65. That is putrid. And the pitching in this game on Wednesday was not good. Now, it was really interesting to see how Nats manager Blake Butera handled the starting pitcher in this game, Miles Mikolas. So Miles Mikolas, of course, signed with the Nats as a free agent this past February off having spent the previous 8 seasons with the Cardinals. Mikolas on Wednesday was only allowed to pitch for 3 innings. He allowed 2 runs in 3 innings. He gave up 5 hits, all of which were singles. He issued 3 walks. He recorded 3 strikeouts. He threw just 55 pitches. Not many pitches in terms of his entire outing, although that's a decent number of pitches over 3 innings. 55 pitches, 34 strikes, 21 balls. Blake Butera pulled Mikolas before he finished facing the Cardinals lineup for a second time. Butera got Mikolas the heck out of the game off Mikolas, of course, having been really bad over his first two starts. Now, I thought it was interesting what Blake Butera said during his post-game press conference, saying part of the reason, and maybe Butera was just saying this to be nice, I don't know, but part of the reason for doing this was that the team wanted to see Brad Lord.
Yeah, he got through the lineup twice. His first couple outings, we asked a lot from him, a lot of pitches, a lot of innings. He did his job, got through the lineup twice, left with a 2-1 game, and wanted to get Lordy some extra innings today.
You know, it was almost like saying, hey, we're a rebuilding team. We're not that interested in seeing Miles Mikolas. We're more interested in seeing Brad Lord. But again, maybe that was Butera trying to be nice. What did you make of Butera doing this? What did you make of his explanation for doing this?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of being careful not to say anything too negative about Mikolas in that spot. But I think he clearly went into this game with the intention of only letting Mikolas face that lineup twice. I don't think they were going to let him go more than that. Now, he said he had really thrown a lot the first two times. I'm looking at it right now. 97 pitches in his first start over 5 innings. Okay, early in the season, that's a lot. Last time, obviously the 11 runs that he gave up, but he threw 87 pitches over 4 1/3. Did you have to ramp him down to only 55 over 3 innings? No, they certainly could have let him go further. But when they didn't use Brad Lord for a couple of days at the start of the series, especially in a close game that went to extra innings the night before, that kind of set off some alarms in my head that said they're saving him for Wednesday because they know they're going to need him to follow Mikolas whenever that is, and they're going to want some length out of him. So I think that was both, yes, wanting to see Brad Lord pitch, but also acknowledging that you kind of have to have somebody like that ready to go on a day that Mikolas pitches, because you're probably asking for too much for Mikolas to get you through the lineup 3 times or to give you 5, 6 plus innings. So I think there was maybe a little combination of both those. There's Lord pitched well. He gave up a home run. Otherwise, he was really effective, I think, for 3 innings. Brad himself hoped that he could have gone 4, thought he could be a little more efficient and be able to do that. But all things considered, I thought he was fine. And Mikolas was not awful, certainly not by the standard that he set in that first game of the homestand. But 55 pitches in 3 innings is still not very good. 3 walks, still not very good. And it kind of felt like to put him back out there any longer, you were playing with fire. And I think that's probably deep down what Blake Butera would admit.
You think about a few things off this. First of all, what does it say about a member of your rotation that 3 starts in, you're only letting him go 3 innings for whatever reason? So that's number one. Number 2, and it's tied to number 1, how much longer is Miles Mikolas going to be in the rotation if that's how this team is viewing him? But the other part of this is the Brad Lord part of this. If the team is that interested in seeing more of Brad Lord, does that suggest to you that Lord could be in the rotation sooner rather than later? Or do you think his current role is the role that the Nats want to have Brad Lord in?
I think they view him as more valuable in the role that he's in. Now, traditionally you'd say a long man is like the mop-up guy who comes in when you're trailing by a lot or ahead by a lot. I think in their perfect world, they would like to use him like this for 3 innings at a time, but in competitive games, and not have that be mop-up duties. So maybe it is kind of pairing him up with a starter that you don't expect to go deep in a game. Maybe there are days that you want to give a lot of guys in your bullpen the day off, and so you can count on Lord to be the one who goes, innings 6, 7, and 8 and bridge the gap to the closer. I think the performance of everyone else in the bullpen has prevented them from being in a position to really use him the way they want to. But I do get the sense that they view him as more valuable in this role. And I think there's something to that. I don't think your 5 best pitchers have to be starters. The way they're being used in modern ways, that can be just as valuable a role for him to pitch every, say, 3 or 4 days, 3 innings at a time, than every 5 or 6 days, 5 or 6 innings at a time. So I'll be curious to see how it goes from here. But if he keeps doing well, they're going to find ways to use him, I think, in games that are competitive, but also being able to use him not just for 1 inning at a time, but for 2, 3, maybe even 4 innings.
And you alluded to this, but you could do it where Brad Lord is like your tandem starter with Miles Mikolas, and you have him ready to go for a bulk outing the days on which Miles Mikolas is pitching because you don't necessarily trust Miles Mikolas to pitch deep into games. We've talked so much about the opener strategy. There is that tandem start strategy where you have a starter and then a reliever who you pair with the starter with the idea that reliever eating up a bunch of innings in that game. And maybe this is what the Nats do with Brad Lord. It'll be interesting to see. But the fact that Butera was so open about that, we wanted to see Brad Lord pitch. I mean, I think that speaks to what you were just saying. Like, this team thinks highly of Brad Lord, even though he is not in the rotation.
Yeah, I'm looking back at, it was the opening game in Philadelphia, the Monday night game, which they won. It was Foster Griffin's first start. He went 5. He was solid, 2 runs. They're ahead. And they had a pretty big lead because they scored a lot that night. They used Lord for 3 innings. In that game, 3 innings, 51 pitches. He pitched the 6th, the 7th, and the 8th, and then they went to Cole Henry to finish it out. Now, it was more of a lopsided game that night, but I think the strategy would have been the same even if it was a close game. So it doesn't always have to be Mikolas' spot. And I think that's where, again, you can use him more than once every 5 days. You can line him up every 3 days or so, or 4 days with whoever your starting pitcher may be, and say, he's going to take the wear and tear off the other guys in the bullpen by giving us that length, even after a decent start, but can become the only other pitcher who has to come in, except for maybe somebody to close it out in the 9th. Again, these are all like perfect scenarios in your head. You hope that it works out that way. It very often doesn't. And, Lord knows with this pitching staff, it may not be as simple as that sounds. But I think in their minds, they view Brad Lord as a really valuable piece of this bullpen, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he has to be a starter or a traditional reliever. There are going to be ways for them to use him to maximize the innings they get from him.
Yes, as you said, Lord knows with this pitching staff. Very apropos that you put it that way.
This is sports broadcaster Ben Raby and a longtime listener to the Nats Chat podcast. A while back, I was in the market for a personal trainers, and my ears perked up last season when I heard an ad from show sponsor Table to Mat. Proving the power of advertising, I reached out and eventually began a training program with Chad, and boy, am I ever glad I did. Chad will work with you to devise a personal program. The communication, the flexible scheduling, and the setup at his home gym are all great. I legitimately bounced around trainers and gym programs for years, and I've never had a more productive and enjoyable experience than working with Chad. Do what I did. Visit him online at tabletomat.com. That's table, the number 2, and mat, M-A-T, tabletomat.com. Reach out to Chad. Hear the terrific workout programs he can build for you. Plus, like you, he's a huge Nats fan.
Big thanks to our sponsor, BetterHelp, for partnering with us for this important conversation about mental health.
This is Steve Smith here, former NFL wide receiver and host of the 89 show on YouTube. So having a counselor and working with BetterHelp, that gives you an opportunity to really start to unpack. But people don't understand, when you unpack things, you also open up a box that you're not always sure what's inside. So I think that's why seeing a professional is extremely important. If you need someone to open up to, visit BetterHelp. That's betterhelp.com/89 to get started.
The 1-2 on the way. Swinging a line drive, base hit through the hole to left field. That'll score Herrera. Burleson will head home. The throw toward third is not in time. And the Cardinals lead it 6-1. They've broken it open with a 2-run single from Joel Pozo, his first hit of the season.
So Brad Lord overall was good. 1 run in 3 innings. Top of the 5th, gave up a 1-out full count solo homer by Jordan Walker to center field for a 3-1 Cardinals lead. But overall, another rough game for the Nats bullpen. 4 Nats relievers combined to allow 4 runs in 6 innings. Cionel Perez, another shaky outing. 1 run, 1 inning. Top of the 7th, he allowed a run. Began the inning by issuing back-to-back walks and then gave up an RBI single by Alec Burleson up the middle on a 1-2 pitch for a 4-1 Cardinals lead. Cole Henry officially allowed 2 runs in 1 2/3 innings. This was a shame. His outing was going well. He recorded 3 strikeouts, but over the final 2 batters he faced in what ended up being a 2-run 9th for the Cardinals, issued a 2-out hit by pitch and then a 2-out walk. P.J. Poulin came into the game top of the 9th. Runners on first and second, 2 outs. Nats down 4-1. Poulin to the first batter he faced issued a 2-out walk of Jordan Walker to load the bases. Poulin to the next batter he faced gave up a 2-out, 2-run single by Joel Pozo to left field on a 1-2 pitch for a 6-1 Cardinals lead. Nats relievers over the 3 games in this series combined to allow, brace yourself for this, 14 runs, 13 earned in 15 and a third innings. The Nats for this regular season now have the following relief pitching stats: ERA of 6.34, WHIP of 1.68, 15 home runs allowed in 55 and a third innings, 35 walks allowed in 55 and a third innings. I don't know what's worse, the home runs or the walks, but the two in tandem, the two in concert have been brutal. And the extent to which Nats relievers are giving up homers and issuing walks, just painful.
And I feel like that's been a recurring theme for several years now. This is not new to this group or this regime or this particular set of relievers that they have. This has been going on for quite a while. And I mean, the stat that you need to know, 7 different Nationals relievers in this series walked the first batter they faced coming into a game, and PJ Pullen did it twice. 7. The only 2 who did not were Brad Lord and Cole Henry. And Henry, when he came in extra innings on Tuesday, gave up an immediate RBI double. So it wasn't like he got the first batter out or was that effective. Those walks, I think that's the stat. That's the one that's just adding to the pitch count, lengthening innings beyond what they need to be. It's forcing them to throw so many more pitches than they should. I mean, Cionel Perez throws 24 pitches in 1 inning. Cole Henry, pitching for back-to-back days, goes 43 pitches over 1 2/3. This is not a guy, I mean, I know he was a starter in the minors, but since coming to the big leagues, he has not been a multi-inning reliever. And to do that on back-to-back days and throw that many pitches, that's not going to be good for him in the long run. But I think Butera is just trying to get out of these innings, trying to use as few relievers as he can at the end of a long homestand. Throw the ball over the plate. If they beat you with hits, you live with it. But the walks are just prolonging these innings, driving up the pitch counts. And to me, there's a real cumulative effect of that, not just on that particular game, but the day after that, et cetera. I think that more than anything stood out to me about this bullpen and really the pitching staff as a whole, the number of walks.
Yeah, you know, I am reminded of what a certain someone named Mike Rizzo said 2 years ago, right? I don't care how hard you throw ball 4. And I don't know if the Nats these days are allowed to reference anything that Mike Rizzo ever said, but if they are, maybe that saying needs to come back into form here. Yeah, I mean, the Nats right now are actually pretty healthy, and it's hard to see that continuing if these pitchers continue to have to throw this many pitches in these games. These guys have got to be more efficient. Otherwise, there's no way that these arms are going to hold up. So the Nats offense in this game against the Cardinals on Wednesday, like we said, the Nats offense lately had been really good. The Nats had been one of the better offensive teams in the majors for this regular season through Tuesday, number 3 in MLB and team OPS plus 131. But the Nats on Wednesday really just like a nothing burger in terms of the offensive performance. 1 run, 4 hits, all of which were singles, 1 walk, 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. The Nats had a hard time with the Cardinals starting pitcher Michael McGreevy. He allowed 1 run in 6 innings. And, you know, watching this game, it was odd to see this. We've become kind of spoiled by the Nats offense here lately. And I know it's odd to say that, right? I mean, the Nats are a team that has restarted the rebuild. Like, you know, is the offense going to continue to be this good? No, probably not. But the Nats came into this game having scored at least 5 runs in each of the team's previous 6 games. And so to see an offensive performance like this really was in stark contrast to what we had become accustomed to in recent days.
Yeah, I don't know about you, but I just kind of kept waiting all afternoon for something to happen. You thought, oh, well, they're not going to be shut out like this over the entire game. And they were. I mean, they threatened a little bit early on. They had 2 on, nobody out in the first and couldn't score. That maybe was a bad omen for the day. They got 1 run in the third after, again, back-to-back singles with nobody, back-to-back singles to lead off the inning. But even that run was on a fielder's choice, so they didn't drive anybody in with a hit. And then they were shut down the rest of the way. 20 of their last 21 batters were retired. And I think that was the biggest surprise. I'm not saying I expected them to come back to win the game, but I thought they would challenge. I thought they'd have something going that resembled a rally, and they had nothing. It was a lot of weak contact, not a lot of balls hit out of the infield, to be honest. I'm looking at this. I only see one ball out of the infield after the third inning. Michael McGreevy does not throw real hard, but he had them kind of eating out of the palm of his hand. Michael McGreevy pitched against the Nationals in this game like Miles Mikolas used to pitch against the Nationals as a member of the Cardinals. Softer, and even softer than that. Make him reach for it, hit the ball on the ground. Maybe he picked up some things from Mikolas when they were teammates because he looked very much like the old Miles Mikolas, the Cardinals version of Miles Mikolas when facing the Nationals.
Well, the Cardinals starting pitcher with the initials MM outdid the National starting pitcher with the initials MM in this game. The bright spot for the Nats was, guess who? Yes, James Wood, still hot. He is the Nats starting right fielder and number one batter, 2 for 4 with 2 singles. Wood scorched these 2 balls that resulted in singles. In fact, James Wood accounted for the 2 highest exit velocities per StatCast for the game, 116 miles per hour and 110.7 miles per hour. Wood in the bottom of the first had a leadoff full count single into left center field. That was the single that registered the exit velocity of 116 miles per hour. I know that most people know this, but you hit a ball 90 miles per hour, that's really good. You hit it 100 miles per hour, that's terrific. You hit it 116 miles per hour. That's absurd. And James Wood did that on that leadoff single in the bottom of the first.
I think they said the hardest hit ball by a National this year and one of the hardest hit in the major leagues so far in this young season. He even on one of his outs in the 8th inning hit it 102, I think. He is crushing the ball. You know what he hasn't done a lot in the last 3 days is he hasn't been striking out. Maybe Tim made too big a deal out of that, how he struck out in every game that he'd played. I think James is a loyal listener to the podcast and decided, I got to put a stop to that. I'm sick of listening to Shovers mention that because he was either laying off of tough pitches and drawing walks or making really loud contact. There are plenty of things for the Nationals to be concerned with right now. James Wood is not at all one of them. He is locked in at this moment.
He is a pleasure to watch right now, even on a day on which the offense did nothing. James Wood, you can't wait to see what he does because you're like, is he going to homer? Even if he doesn't homer, how high is the exit velocity going to be? There's gambling stuff now in sports. I don't know if the Nats or at Nationals Park or some partner of the Nats takes bets on James Wood exit velocities, but you certainly could do that with the way that this guy hits baseball. So terrific work by him, but the Nats do lose the game, lose the series, go 1-5 on the homestand. Next up, a 7-game road trip beginning with a 3-game series at the Milwaukee Brewers. Game 1 Friday night, 7:40. Jake Irvin will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 2 Saturday night at 7:10. Foster Griffin will be the Nats starting pitcher. Game 3 Sunday afternoon at 2:10. Zach Littell will be the Nats starting pitcher. So, we had the opener a while back now with PJ Poulin, and now these last few series, it's been, traditional starting pitcher approach for the Nats in this series. I wonder how much of that is strategic versus how much of that is the state of the bullpen versus how much of that is, hey, we don't have any scheduled off days coming up, so we can't be leaning on these relievers too much.
Probably a combination of all of those things, yeah. And who you're facing. I think they would have liked to use it against the Dodgers, given their lefty thumpers at the top of the lineup, but they just couldn't afford to do it, essentially, given what had gone on the few days before that. And I don't think against Milwaukee they will feel the need. What I'm looking for in that series, to me, the keys to that series, number one, length from your starters. If you're going to go the traditional route, let's go all in on the traditional route. Let's go for 6 innings from your starting pitchers. Take the pressure off the bullpen. Jake Irvin's making his 3rd start. Foster Griffin has looked good in his first 2. This is his 3rd start. Zach Littell should be fully built up right now. I want to see Blake Butera let these guys go deeper in games. Take the pressure off the bullpen. Try to get as few innings as possible from those guys. So number one, I want to see the starters go deeper. And then number 2, you hope that what you saw in the bigger picture with their lineup can continue. Milwaukee's a good hitters park. I know they have a good pitching staff. It's a good team they're facing. The Pirates have excellent pitching that they're going to face when they get there at the end of the road trip. Can they keep this going offensively? And it's not just James Wood, but it's C.J. Abrams, Brady House, Luis Garcia, Dalen Lyle, some of the other role players. I would really like to see that continue so that, again, it just takes some pressure off the pitching staff and especially off the bullpen, and they don't feel like they have to be perfect, because my hunch is they're not going to be perfect hardly ever this year. And so if you're going to win some games, you're going to have to either outslug your opponents or you're going to need your starting pitchers to be really good and go deep into games.
Al Galdi here to tell you about Window Nation's The More You Buy, The More You Save sale. But before that, the Window Nation look into the future.
0-1. Runner off for third. Misses inside. Thrown out for McIntosh. Not in time. Cruz puts his blazing speed on display and swipes third.
Well, happy spring. Window Nation is ready for spring, and Window Nation wants Nats Chat podcast listeners to know that there's no better time to upgrade your home with great Window Nation windows than right now, as Window Nation is offering to Nats Chat podcast listeners the More You Buy, the More You Save sale. Save up to 50%. Get your windows with 0% interest for 5 years. During uncertain times, one of the best investments that you can make is investing in your home. So visit windownation.com now to book a consultation and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you. That's windownation.com and tell Window Nation that Al Galdi sent you.
O'Brien to the belt. The tall righty delivers 3-2 and a ground ball right side pulled to the first baseman Burleson. He'll flip it to the pitcher covering, and this one is over. A fitting end to it. A lot of ground ball outs off the Nationals' bats, and their red-hot offense stymied today by Cardinals pitching, as St. Louis will take the series finale and the series with a 6-1 win.
All right, some sad news. We on Wednesday afternoon learned that Davey Lopes had died. He was 80. He had been battling Parkinson's disease. Davey Lopes played in the majors over the 1972 through 1987 seasons. Was primarily a second baseman, also played a good bit in the outfield, also played some third base and shortstop. Is best known for his time with the Los Angeles Dodgers, 1972 through 1981. He, with the Dodgers, won the 1981 World Series and 4 National League pennants. He was the Milwaukee Brewers manager, September 1999 to April 2002, but he, in this region, is best known for being a coach for the Nats and also the Baltimore Orioles. Davey Lopes was the Nats first base coach for the 2006 season, and then for the 2016 and 2017 seasons. He was the Orioles first base coach for the 1992 through 1994 seasons. Davey Lopes, in his MLB regular season career, went 557 for 671 on stolen bases, 83.01%, an outstanding success rate made even more impressive by the era in which he played, the 1970s and the 1980s. This was pre-analytics. This was before there really was an understanding of, hey, if you're not successful on stolen bases at least 70-75% of the time, you're doing your team more harm than good. Here was Davey Lopes stealing bases at a clip of 83%. Just phenomenal. My first year as a sports fan was 1987. I had my first baseball card collection that year, and I don't know why this is, but I distinctly remember my Davey Lopes Houston Astros Topps baseball card from 1987, a classic 1980s player, and like the classic first base coach, because it seemed like this guy was a first base coach forever, and you understand why with how prolific he was at the stolen base.
Yeah, I am sure I had that same baseball card. I can picture it with the wood paneling around at the 87 Topps set. He was, I'm going to say, by far the best first base coach the Nats have ever had, but that's not a knock on anybody else. That's how good he was, how in demand he was. He was the Phillies' first base coach when they won the World Series in 2008. Jason Worth used to give him tons of credit. You know, Jason Worth, not a guy who ran a lot, but had a very high success rate, credited Davey Lopes for that. Trey Turner credited him a lot for what he taught him. By the time he was here, he was a little bit of more of a crusty old man who had been there, seen it all, kind of no nonsense, but he was really good at what he did. Frank Robinson wanted him on his staff when he was here in 2006. Dusty Baker, his old Dodgers teammate from the 70s, wanted him on his staff here. I'll give you one kind of funny story. This goes back to 2006, his first stint. He was only here for that first year. And at the very end of that season, with a few days to go, they had informed Frank Robinson that he wasn't going to be coming back as manager. And so that, you know, we knew with a couple days to go, that was going to be the case. And so in my job at that time at the Washington Times, I just put together a list of potential candidates. I didn't know for a fact who was going to be. I thankfully had Manny Acta somewhere on that list. I think I had at least 10 different names on there. And I walk into the clubhouse that day, and Davey Lopes is looking at that chart that I had published. And he kind of brings me over and kind of a little bit of a gruff voice is like, This guy, what's he ever done? He's never done this. This guy, he's never done anything else. Basically dismissing all of my potential options. And he never said it, but I knew deep down what he was trying to say is, why didn't you include me on this list? As you said, he had been the Brewers manager at one point. He was still at that point, sort of younger and probably felt like he deserved another shot at being a big league manager. And while it was not intentional on my part to leave him out, I kind of knew deep down he wasn't going to be considered. And sure enough, he was not one of the many candidates they interviewed for that job. That's just not what they were looking for at that time. But he was a very proud man, lived a really good baseball life. And I know he didn't get that next chance to manage, but you could argue he had more impact over that final decade plus of his career because of what he did as a first base coach for multiple teams who were all really good.
And a very good playing career. I mean, this guy was a key player for the Dodgers for a good number of years and was a big part of a number of Dodgers teams that had postseason success. This installment of Nats Chat brought to us by Table to Mat, which you can count on for all of your nutrition and personal training needs. Table to Mat offers virtual and in-person nutrition services and personal training to the DMV area. You can email Table to Mat directly through the website, tabletomat.com. That's the word table, the number 2, MAT.com. You can call Table to Mat 240-388-2206. You can hit us up on X at Nats_chat. You can find us on Blue Sky at Nats Chat Podcast. You can email us natschatpodcast@gmail.com. And we have a website you could check out too, natschatpodcast.com, at which you can purchase a Nats Chat Podcast t-shirt. All Nationals radio highlights on Nats Chat are courtesy of 106.7 The Fan. For Mark Zuckerman, I'm Al Galdi. We thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time on the Nats Chat Podcast.
Here's Davey Lopes. Hits the first pitch deep to left field. Roy White going back, Holloway back. This ball is out of here. 3-0 Dodgers. The little captain of the Dodgers, Davey Lopes. 3 runs in the inning, and there's about 55,000 people in here that are pretty happy right now, including some Dodgers. The crowd chanting Lopes, Lopes.